Happy Friday, everyone. Today is Friday, April 3rd. Let's get into some math review for today. Make sure you have a pencil and a paper and your work in front of you. Your work should have already been done before you start the video. So quickly, we're going to review some multiplying and dividing by powers of 10. So when we're multiplying a whole number by a power of 10, we have our decimal here. And we know that we're going to move our decimal 2 places to the left because we're dividing. And we see that we have 2 zeros here. So that's an indication of how many times we're going to move our decimal point. 1, 2. That's my decimal point there. I'm going to fill in my missing number with a 0. And we know that our answer is here. When we're multiplying by a power of 10, we're going to move our decimal point to the right. Now in this case, we're going to move our decimal point 2 places to the right. And we know because of the number of zeros. So we have 87. Let's erase that. We have 87. We're going to move our decimal point 2 times to the right. That's better. And then we're going to fill in our missing place values with a 0. Let's pretend that that's a 0. And we're going to have 8,700. I want you to go and check your work and remember that rule as you're checking. Sorry if you hear a little bit of noise in my background. It's raining out, so I'll do my best to work through that. For our first problem, John was playing with wooden blocks. The blocks were different colors and various heights. John measured them using centimeters and made the chart below. Here's our chart. Order the blocks from the tallest colored block to the shortest colored block. Show and explain your thinking. So when thinking about putting our fractions in order from tallest to shortest, we can also think about our fractions as decimal points. We know how to convert some of our fractions, into decimals. We have 3/4. We know that that's 75 hundredths. We know that 2/5 is 4/10. As a decimal, we know that 1/2 is 0.5 or 5/10. So we'll be able to use that information to help put our fractions in order. And also thinking about the unit, centimeters. So your order should be white, then orange, then blue, then black, and then red. Moving on to our next problem. John stacked 2 white blocks, 1 blue block, and 2 orange blocks together. What is the combined height of the blocks? So I have my key here. So we know that we have 2 white blocks, so I'm going to multiply 3/4, the height of my white block, by 2. And I'm going to get 6/4. Blue, there's 1 block, so we just have 2/5. Orange, there should be 2 blocks, so we're going to multiply 1/2 by 2. I'm going to get 2/2, which also is equal to 1. Then I'm going to add up all my blocks to get a combined height. I have 6/4 plus 2/5 plus 2/2, but we notice something here. We can't add unlike units. So we have to create equivalent fractions in order to continue. So I have a common denominator of 20, and I'm going to make sure that I also make my numerators equivalent. So I would get 30/20ths, 8/20ths, and 20/20ths, which combined I'm going to get 58/20ths. We see that we have an FGTO, so we must turn that into a mixed number. We're going to get 2 and 18/20ths. We also see that we can simplify this, right? We want to make sure that our fractions are in its lowest terms when possible. So we would get 2 and 9/10ths as our final answer. Make sure you're pausing in between problems to check your work and revise any mistakes that you may have found. Then John stacked 2 black blocks, 1 white block, and 3 red blocks. What is the combined height of the blocks? For black, we have 2 blocks, so we're going to multiply 1/4 by 2 and get 2/4. We have our 1 white block, 3/4. In red, we're going to multiply the height of the block 1/10 by 3 and get 3/10. Now we're going to add those all up to get our combined height. 2/4 plus 3/4 plus 3/10. Again, we cannot add unlike units. So we're going to find a common denominator. We have a common denominator of 20. So then we're able to make our fractions equivalent. Add that all up together, we're going to get 31/20ths, which is going to equal 1 and 11/20ths is our final answer. And we should remember to always label our answers. So it would be 1 and 11/20 centimeters. Let's go back and make sure that I've done that. Sometimes we forget, but that's okay, and that's why we go back and revise our work. Now we're going to move on to line plots. Hunter is using different lengths of wire for a science project. The line plot below shows the length in meters of each wire he will use. Which of the following is the total length in meters of wire Hunter is using for the project? Our fractions here represent the length of wire in meters, and our x's represent each wire that Hunter used. We're going to add all of those fractions up of each wire that he used to find the total length in meters of the wire Hunter is using for the project. If you got the correct answer, you would get 1 7/8 meters. Make sure you're going back to revise your work if you did not get the correct answer. Linda's cat had 7 kittens. Linda weighed the kittens when they were 3 weeks old. She recorded the kittens' weight to the nearest 1/8 pound on a line plot as shown below. What was the total weight in pounds of all of Linda's kittens when they were 3 weeks old? So here is the same concept, except here you notice that we don't have to convert or make equivalent fractions here. In the problem ahead, we did. We were not able to add unlike units, so we had to make equivalent fractions. Here, we can just add up all of our fractions together. We're going to get 34/8, which equals 4 2/8 for our mixed number. And your correct answer would be C. Need for speed. Here, we're going to be multiplying and dividing a combination of fractions with mixed numbers and fractions and whole numbers. So here we have 1/2 times 11/12, which is going to equal 11/24. 3 1/2 times 3/10 equals 1 1/20. 5/4 times 1 5/6 equals 1 14/30. Now let's review a little bit on dividing fractions and whole numbers. We have 1/4 divided by 3, which equals 1/12. First, I created a bar model and I split up my model into fourths, as you can see here. So now I'm going to divide, so I created fourths. Now, if I focus on 1/4, which is here, I'm going to divide that fourth into thirds. So now that I've broken up my fourth into thirds, so let's say that you had 3 cousins and they were splitting 1/4 of a cake. You would split that cake into thirds. How much of that cake, of that whole cake, would each cousin get? Right, each cousin would get one piece of that third. So of the whole cake, that cousin would get 1/12 of the cake. We also know that our quotient will be less than 1 because we know that when the dividend is less than the divisor, the quotient will be less than 1. Moving on, 11 divided by 1/4 equals 44. So I created 11 bars. Let's say that there are 11 bars of chocolate. I'm going to split up each bar into fourths. How many fourths are in total in those 11 bars of chocolate? You can see that I labeled each fourth 1/4. If I were to count those all up, we would get 44. Here's a model to prove my work. For our last part of our math review, we have decimal multiplication. First, we're going to estimate. Then we're going to ignore the decimals and multiply as whole numbers. Then place the decimal back in according to your estimate. So I have 2 3/10 multiplied by 4 6/10. My estimate is 2 times 5, which equals 10. So I know that my answer should be close to 10. I took out my decimals and then I multiplied. Take a moment to check your work and revise any mistakes that you may have made. My answer is 10 58/100. I knew where to place my decimal because I counted the amount of decimal places in my number sentence. So that's equivalent to 2. So I moved my decimal point 2 times to the left. And I can see that my answer is close to my estimate. I use the same method for the following problems. So I want you to skim through and check your work. Awesome. So now you're going to complete these following questions in Google Classroom and turn it in for your math grade. So head on over there, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Friday.